Call the meeting to order.
All right.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the November 25th regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 25th non-public meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And finally, I'll make a motion to approve the December 3rd budget meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, this list of dates is starting to get shorter, but it's still long. The select board will meet on the following dates: Monday, December 16th for a budget work session beginning at 1 p.m. Monday, December 23rd for a regular meeting at 5 p.m. Monday, January 13th for budget finalization meeting beginning at 1:30 p.m. January 13th for a regular meeting at 5 p.m. January 27th for a regular meeting at 5 p.m. January 27th for the first public budget hearing at 5:15 p.m. And then Thursday, February 6th, second public budget meeting, also at 5:15 p.m. Any citizens wishing to be listed on the select board's agenda should notify town hall before noon, Thursday before the scheduled meeting. And all meetings are held here in town hall and by Zoom. Zoom information can be found on the town's website, plymouthnh.gov. Scott, do you have some town manager reports?
So starting off, just an update on the 25-26 budget. The select board started meeting with department heads on their budgets on Monday, December 2nd. It continued this afternoon, December 9th, and will conclude on Monday, December 16th, based on recommendations from the town manager and the budget committee. The select board will finalize their budget on January 13th, and the first public hearing, as Zach just mentioned, will occur on January 27th at 5:15 here at Town Hall. Our goal is to continue budgeting conservatively for the 25-26 budget. Solar array update. New Hampshire Electric Co-op installed the meter on November 26th, so we now have AC power to the solar array system. Programming of the inverters, 26 inverters was completed on Wednesday, December 4th, and as of that day, the solar array is now in service, providing kilowatt hours to the grid. We are now working with Grace Garvey from the Energy Commission to complete the application for the elective pay program.
Hey, Scott, before you go further, so Grace has set a date and a time for the ribbon cutting for that,
Yes,
Monday the 16th at 9 a.m.
perfect.
And we're trying to get some people to attend, and hopefully the board will. And Scott, what?
Thank you.
For goodness sake.
Can't hear you.
Thank you, Ann.
Union contract negotiations. We're happy to report that we've finalized union negotiations with the police union and the Plymouth Professional Firefighters Union. Information technology request for proposal. We have received 4 proposals from the RFP that was issued in October. The closing date was Tuesday, November 26th at 4:30 p.m. We will now start to review the proposals and pick the top contractor to interview. Our current contract expires January 31st, 2025. Recycling update. We currently have 1 part-time opening. We did hire a full-time staff member last Friday who started today, and the word we received was things went well throughout the day, and we now have 3 full-time employees at the recycling center. So I won't finish my update on that because we're back to where we need to be right now. Welfare update. During the month of November, Mary Ann had contact with 31 individuals requesting assistance. Mary Ann was able to assist and facilitate services for many of these requests. Mary Ann continues to be very busy with calls for assistance as the weather turns colder. Tri-County Community Action Program has announced their cold weather shelter services in Grafton County. These funds may be used to offset the cost of providing emergency shelter in hotels to unsheltered households during cold weather events. The town of Plymouth will receive $4,000 to offset this cost. Highway Department winter snow removal policy for 24-25. With winter upon us, and if you have questions about the town roads, streets, sidewalks, snow removal, please refer to the town website at the following link under Departments, Highway Department, Winter Snow Removal Policy. There have been some questions, and we have referred people to the website for the answers to that. Plymouth State University updates. I'll be meeting with Jess Dutal on Monday, December 16th for our monthly meeting. And a reminder again, downtown free holiday parking, Plymouth State University lots 210 and 211, lower lots adjacent to Silver Center, will be available for free downtown holiday parking from December 11th through December 31st. Zach covered the important dates to remember. Other items that weren't included that were updated today is that I have worked on the Grafton County Pandemic Emergency Relief Fund grant application. Our application that we will be submitted upon your approval is to update street lighting on the Main Street in the low-lit areas such as the crosswalks. It would include 3 new light poles, 4 new lighting heads for a total of $32,900. So we have the quotes for that. I have the detailed narrative ready to submit. So if the board is in favor of that, I'd like to get that submitted tomorrow morning, first thing.
Which crosswalks is that for?
I'm sorry?
Which crosswalks is that lighting
It
for?
is at the Enterprise Center,
Yep.
right here in front of Town Hall, and the one over by Peekaball.
Okay.
And then there's 2 additional lighting heads on the South Main Street area that would be replaced as well. So if the board is in favor, I will move forward with that.
Need a motion or just the opinion of the board?
Consensus works.
Okay,
Consensus works.
I'm in favor.
Favor?
And then other updates, we're working with Charter Spectrum on contract negotiations in hopes to have that done hopefully within the next month, that we will bring back to the board based on those negotiations.
Great.
And that concludes my report.
Didn't we just negotiate that?
Wasn't that long ago, but yeah, it's only,
It,
probably was only 3 years, something.
yeah, 3-year
Wow,
contract.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Scott on the town manager's report?
Nope.
A little early for a town hearing, so let's jump into employee recognition. Even if this goes a little long, who knows? We've got a couple folks to recognize in the audience tonight. Tom Morrison, who has served 37 years for the town, and Joe Fagnant, who served 35 years for the town. Congratulations to both of you on your retirement. You've both been a tremendous asset to the town, and you've been instrumental in moving your departments forward, keeping up with current standards and requirements, and we thank you for all your years of hard work and the dedication. Your abilities and contributions have been an important key to the success of our entire municipal operation, and we wish you all the best in this next chapter of your life, and can't wait to see where this journey takes both of you. Please stay in touch. But we have plaques for both of you that are great. Come up. Actually, I'll come around. No, I'll come around. 37 years.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
Gotta get
Get the picture, sorry.
Picture.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Thank you all.
Thank you. Got any big trips planned? What do you got going on, Tom?
Park City.
All right, that's a good one.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Zach, if I may?
Yeah, please, Scott.
All right, you know where we are, right?
Congratulations. Thank you.
So just a couple of words from my experience of working with both Tom and Joe, is that obviously I've worked with Tom for about the 37 years that he was on the fire department. And I can remember days when Tom was dispatching out of the fire department, when dispatch services took place out of Plymouth Fire Rescue. And I will just say, Tom, it's been a pleasure working with you over those years. You have truly been dedicated, professional, and provided outstanding services to this town. And you should be very proud of the efforts that you've put forth and the dedication that you've shown to the town over the years. So my gratitude to you and thank you.
Thank you. You're old if you remember the distance.
I was new at the time. And Joe, thank you. I've really enjoyed the 2 years that you and I've worked together. There's been a lot of improvements in the Public Works Department over that 2 year time. And I know they weren't easy tasks on making sure that you always had the staff available to keep the roads safe. And I don't think everybody realizes in this day and age that when you look at police, you look at fire, you look at EMS, you always look at them as keepers of public safety. But another big aspect is the Public Works Department and the Highway Department as keeping public safety in the forefront each and every day, to make sure the roads are safe, to make sure they're treated properly, to make sure that any hazards are mitigated throughout the year. And that just goes back to your dedication in December of '22 when we had the major rainstorm. And you and your staff were out there taking care of it. And the efforts that you and your staff, and specifically Norma Jean, did to work with FEMA to recover the cost and mitigate that risk that we have. So thank you for all you've done, and wish you both a very happy retirement.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have 30 seconds, Zach?
I would love that.
I just want to thank you all for your support, and Scott, it's been a pleasure working with you. It's been an honor to serve the community, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't do what we do without your support, the support of our families, our membership, and obviously the taxpayers. So thank you. And I'm confident that with Chief Pierce's leadership, things will be good. Thanks
Thank you,
again.
Tom.
You know, Tom, you touched on, I think, one of the most critical things that anybody in a role like yours can do and shows such great leadership is to leave the department in someone's hands that you're confident can run it. And you know, we have Kevin, and you know, we're so thankful for him and the work you did to find a good replacement for yourself and you know, leave us in that great spot. And the same in highway with you, Joe, and finding Steve for us. And it's hard when we lose someone with this many years of service, but it's also so nice to know that you put that work in to leave us in a great spot. Thank you. Any other comments?
Nah. I mean, you put me to shame. I worked for 30 years in the state and then retired, so both you guys are definitely workaholics, but you'll enjoy retirement that much more.
Goes by quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does.
Good luck,
Thank you.
both of you.
Yeah, thank you,
You
both.
know where we are, so if you need it.
I would like to make a recommendation to the board that this year's annual town report be dedicated to Joe and Tom.
Wow.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I think that's a
Thank you.
great send-off.
Be in touch trying to get some background information on you.
You don't have enough.
Depends on what you want her to share.
Printed.
And And now fire and highways will cover the cost of the
Right.
annual report.
All right. Well, with that, did we get to 6:15? Well, we got to 5:15 right on the button. All right, I'm going to open a public hearing to discuss the proposed amendments to the fees for building and permits, solar panels, swimming pools, fencing, plumbing, electrical, cell towers, signs,
All of the above.
all of the above.
So attached to the handout for the agenda tonight, the proposals are attached to that agenda for the public as well.
And, hi.
Hi.
So one of the things we talked about prior to the hearing was having some examples
Yes.
as well. And so that's one thing I hope you can walk us through a little bit tonight.
Certainly.
But overall, you can introduce this. I mean, I know you did last meeting, but
Sure,
give kind of
yeah.
a brief
I'll
introduction.
just do a brief recap.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a 3-year process where we review the building permit fees. And this year, basically, we're looking at, or what I'm recommending is some minor increases to the residential fees. Just keep in mind, they may look like they're bigger, but we do this every 3 years, so it's can be some big jumps. So increases on the residential fees, taking some fees that were just kind of miscellaneous, fell into the miscellaneous category, and delineating them out specifically, such as swimming pools and fences, accessory dwelling units, solar panels. Also, adding in a couple things that most communities do, but Plymouth does not, and that's having an additional fee for plumbing and electrical and mechanical work. And the reason behind that is that if you have two similar projects, but one of them involves electrical and plumbing work, one of them does not, then it's important to have the fees be assessed appropriately for projects that are going to require more time, both to review them ahead of time and then also more inspections. And then the fourth change is a somewhat major shift in the way that we assess the commercial fees. And that typically Plymouth has been assessing the commercial fees based on square footage, as we do with the residential. But we've had some instances this past year with some 6-figure commercial projects that could not be tied to square footage. And therefore, we'd have situations where somebody could put $250,000 into a facelift of a commercial building and pay less than a fee than it would take for one of us to put a shed in their backyard. So we're trying to even out the fees to reflect where the time and costs to the town are reflected. So that's a brief overview of the proposal. Tonight's handout, one of the things was I went through, we have basically, we track all the building permits by spreadsheet. I went through and took a vast majority of them and tried to look at what is the current permit cost or for 2024, and what would it be if that same project were to happen under this new fee structure. And I broke it down into residential and commercial. And you'll see that, as I've stated before, the vast majority of our fees, permit fees this year, were well under $100. And it was actually 90, I believe it was 98 out of the 137 fees generated were under $100, and the vast majority of those will continue to be $100. So there'll be some moderate increases from a residential standpoint. On the commercial side, you'll see that some will have minimal increases, some will have substantial increases, because it'll be based on the size and cost of the project rather than square footage, which really isn't applicable in many instances. So, questions?
This spreadsheet's great. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. And then just one other thing to throw in there, another piece of information that you had asked for was, what are other communities doing? So, on my, basically I looked at, it's difficult around here because there aren't a lot of other communities. You can't compare us to Rumney and Ashland and Holderness and Campton because they do not have the commercial districts and the commercial infrastructure that we have. So, for better for worse, I've had to look at other communities, looking at Salem, for example, which has a very large commercial district, Conway, Newmarket, and some of them still do base it on the square footage, but the overwhelming majority of them base it on the cost of the project. So just take a look at the memo that I had submitted. Salem and Conway are $12 per thousand. Newmarket and Newport, $10 per thousand. Wolfboro will assign a cost per square foot of $75 per square foot, both for commercial and residential projects, so that they can try and come up with a cost for it, and then they assess a square footage, a charge per thousand. Keene, Dover, Somersworth, and Manchester, they're cities, but they also have the same fee structure. So this is more what is becoming the norm. Tilton, I've talked with Tilton, and I talked with their planning coordinator there, and she said, well, we're in the midst of doing the same process. What are you doing? So she asked for my information. So they are looking at doing a similar fee structure as us. To my knowledge, they've not made any decisions on it yet. So this is the way that the communities are moving.
That's great.
Okay.
And then just to address one last point that you would ask for, looking for planning board input. I don't know if any of you had watched the planning board meeting this past Thursday night, but they were chock full of an agenda, and they didn't even cover it all in terms of public hearings for the zoning changes, so they were not able to fit me in. But the question that was brought up by this board was whether or not they felt that having these changes would be a detriment to businesses locating in the town. And to go back to my previous municipal experience when I was in the Board of Selectmen back in Massachusetts, it was a similar issue because in Massachusetts, and I know people hate it when I mention that, but they allow for what's called tax classification, and that's that you can have an increased tax rate for commercial properties. And that was one of the big things that they said, oh, well, if we institute that, then we're gonna drive businesses away. But if you look at the communities that are strategically based, you look at Burlington, which is at the intersection of Route 3 and 128. You look at Woburn, which is the intersection of 93 and 128. They have tax classification where they're basically taxing commercial properties at 150% of the tax rate of residential properties. And nobody's leaving town, because those are the places where they want to be. And Plymouth is the same situation. Businesses want to be in Plymouth because it's where they want to be. You know, Steve Kelly's not going to back off from the development of Tenny Mountain over this. So, open up to questions.
Any questions from the board?
Just thinking, boy, that would be disappointing if Steve did back down.
No, the changes seem to make sense, and the
Yes, great.
spreadsheet provided seems to enumerate what we wanted to see.
Thank you.
For sure. All right, I will open it to public comments.
Frank Miller. I support the intent and purpose of this, but to be clear, I do have a question about standalone accessory solar panel systems rather than a roof-mounted solar system that is connected to the electrical system of the house or the structure and/or the co-op, as opposed to an accessory single panel unit that is not hooked up to any electrical system, would not require a permit and/or inspection. And the other is under Chapter 11 of the International Building Code, an owner of a building has the right and responsibility to maintain all systems, which may require replacement of a fan, which is considered an accessory. It's not an electrical system. Same with plumbing, changing the faucet. So long as you don't extend the system itself, which requires a permit, those are necessary actions to maintain the property in a safe manner, operating manner. So I would like to make sure that this, as another issue is signs. If you have an operation that requires warning signs, hazardous area signs, those should not require permits and/or inspection fees to go associated with that. That should be a reasonable event in the application of the use of the land. And so I think I did have that put in the ordinance that the owner has the right to repair without a permit or a license, so long as they don't extend the system which requires that licensing. Thank you.
Did you want to speak to those, Tom?
So first off, in terms of solar panels, whether there really is no differentiation from a permitting standpoint as to whether or not it is a roof mount versus ground-based solar. So it would still be the $60 fee, no matter the size or the scope of the project and whether it was ground-based or roof-mounted. Does that answer your question?
Well, the thing is, I have a solar panel, you could buy it, Tractor Supply, literally put it up in the window. And I don't think I need you to inspect me just sticking it with a rubber stick on in the window, and it's not hooked into an electrical system.
I absolutely agree.
And
Yeah.
so I can see a roof mounted or a structured system that's hooked in, that needs the proper review.
Oh, absolutely,
A
but
single panel accessory unit to keep a 12-volt battery charged
Mhm.
is not a major system.
I agree. It just like I have, little solar-powered lights on my steps and on my driveway. They require no wiring,
Right.
so
That's,
yeah, that would just more of an accessory.
that's what they call an accessory
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So that would not require any type of a permit.
Make sure that we clarify that.
Yes.
A lot of
Yeah,
people-
because there is no wiring involved in it, so therefore it wouldn't require any permitting.
Yeah.
And similarly, to move on to your next question, you mentioned, for example, a ceiling fan or a light fixture or a bath fixture. The Plymouth zoning ordinance specifically lists things that are exempt from permitting. And included in those is the basic changing of a fixture. So swap out of a like kind fixture, so that if you're changing your toilet, your bathroom sink, you want to swap out a light fixture, a ceiling fan, those things under the zoning do not require a permit and therefore don't even come into play with this. If you get into a situation where you are running additional wiring or doing rough plumbing, then those situations do require a permit under the zoning.
That's why I say expanding the system, you require a license.
Correct. And then, there was one third point that you
The
had.
third point was signs that are required for use. So I have an operation, I require to post warning signs.
Right, yep.
Because of the type of operation.
And the zoning, again, specifically addresses signs that are exempt from permitting. And most likely that would fall under a warning sign or a temporary sign. So this is more for regular commercial business signs.
Yep. Like that same sort of things that they have like zoning compliance rules about their height and the way they need to
Exactly.
be lit and how far back from the road, all those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions from the audience? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Go back to the board. And do we have to have a second hearing on this, or we just one hearing's fine? We can vote to adopt?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Do farmers have to have a permit to have fencing?
I assume
It
so.
falls within the zoning ordinance, they do.
Well, if they have livestock and they don't have a permit to have a fence, it would be a nuisance.
But I would say it would have to follow the zoning ordinance.
Can I address that?
Please.
So, the zoning ordinance requires a permit for a fence 4 feet or over. So, most instances, a livestock fence is going to be under 4 feet. But the zoning ordinance, which is completely separate than what we're talking about now we're just talking about fees. But the zoning ordinance requires a permit for any fence over 4 feet, and any fence 6 feet or over requires a special exception from the ZBA. So that is something that could be changed for agricultural uses, but it would need to be done through a zoning amendment, which is different than this. But it brings up a good subject and a good point. And you would know far better than I would as to what the average height of a agricultural fence is.
I know farmers in Plymouth who raise deer, and they need high fences.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it could be a burden on them to have to get permits.
Well, I would argue that the permitting process is not very difficult, and that in my experience, and maybe Kevin and Scott can speak of their experience prior to me, I've not had any issues with agricultural entities or farmers looking for fences. But certainly, I would have no problem with some type of a zoning amendment be proposed through the planning board that would exempt agricultural uses. But I think it's a good idea, but it's a different subject.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, I got a question. So, unpermitted work, and you wouldn't find out about that unless you did an inspection of the home after it was done or something, or, and then right now, there's no fee, but, in the future, it'll be double the permit fee.
Yes, and doubling the permit fee is fairly standard. And what happens is I find out, for example, I have some tradespeople that will call me up and let me know about unpermitted work going on because they feel that it damages the integrity of the whole system. And sometimes I just might be driving by and, I had an incident on downtown street fairly recently where I drove by and I saw a bathtub sitting out in front of the house, and I saw a box for a shower surround kit in front of the house. So I knocked on the door. So, but yes, so that it does come up. It also comes up, for example, the assessor might go out and look at something in a random review of the property and say, well, this doesn't match our records, and they go back to the office and they check the property file and see that no permits have been applied for and issued. So it's a way to try and keep people in line. And not as much because we're trying to punish people. Some communities will have a much larger fee, but we want to have the property inspected to make sure that it's safe and meets the requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Frank, did you have another question? I saw you stand up.
Fences, there are certain activities requiring a fence for safety purpose to prevent livestock like deer or moose or whatever from entering airports and other areas. So those are required either by federal or state law. And so to me, that's a permitted, required accessory for an 8-foot fence, not unlike agricultural containment purposes that are reasonable for the use of the land. And it's not like having a 8-foot fence in a single-family residential zone for view aspects, but these are for safety of the operation within the confines and or preventing livestock from moving about. I don't think that's, I believe if it's required by the state and or the federal government, then that it's a permitted event.
All right, back to the fee structure. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the fee structure as proposed.
Second.
Point of order. Can we set a
A date?
date, maybe of January 1st? Just so that way,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, because I want to be able to, I need to change forms. I also want to be able to inform various contractors, give them a heads up of what we're doing so that they're not just hit with it. So I'd like to see a starting date, whether it be January 1st or whatever you decide, but I would like to have some time for not just myself to be able to prepare, but also I'd like to give notice to contractors so they're not caught off guard.
I'll amend said motion to set a starting date of January 1st.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Tom. Very thorough, highly appreciated.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Any other questions from you while I'm here?
No?
On any other subjects?
I think we're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Great to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the Plymouth Housing Opportunity Grant Round 2.
So back in September, the planning board through Joseph submitted a grant application for the round 2 of the New Hampshire Housing Community Grants. Plymouth was awarded a grant for $25,000 to complete a master plan housing chapter, which the planning board has accepted. So I bring this tonight just to make you aware, and we will hold a public hearing on December 23rd for the acceptance of funds, as long as the select board would like to move forward with this.
I'd like to move forward in accepting money.
It's a good project, too, I think.
25,000, you said, Scott?
25,000. So we have a public hearing scheduled for December 23rd that we will conduct at 5:15.
Perfect. Anything else we should know about that, or
That's really,
pretty straightforward?
it's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. Any other questions from the board? All right, signature file review. I'm gonna see if I have a different pen. This one is garbage.
Mine died.
That's more than Neil.
All right, so we have a couple of abatements here. I have a 2024 in-house abatement.
Hey, Neil. Envelope is for you.
The whole pile?
Just the envelope.
This is for 108 Boulder Point Drive, where the tax bill amount exceeded the low-income housing credit amount per RSA 75:1-A. This abatement is for $1,065. And places to sign there. Next item is a 2024 in-house abatement. This is for property located at 45 Main Street, in which the property actually had a fire on April 20th of '24. So it's prorated for the year. This abatement is for $3,854.08. The next one is for 43 Main Street. Again, there was a fire at this property on 4/20 of '24, and this abatement is for $770. Last item is a report of woodcut. This is an, property is located at,
For goodness sake.
it's not on.
This Scott?
Yeah, sure.
Map and lot is 203, lot 61. It doesn't specifically give me the address of the property, but the amount of the yield tax is $961.76. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Oh, I think is there a second spot to sign? I missed the second one.
Yeah, that's just a second spot. This one.
Okay.
This is far too difficult.
Sorry.
Here we go.
difficult.
I think the problem is that we have a left-handed person who does that, so. Yep.
Do we also have Christmas cards to sign?
You already signed them.
That-
I'm just reminding
He did
somebody.
not.
Neil does.
Neil has a lot to sign.
Neil has some work to do. That it, Ann?
That's all I had, yes. Thank you.
All right. Let's plow through some committee reports. We'll skip Mary Ann. Planning Board.
Oh, I just gotta finish signing this one. We had a very lengthy planning board meeting. I was there 4.5 hours. We had 4 public hearings on the agenda. I took notes. Let's see. John Christ was in the chair, and this was supposed to be a work session. We had 4 public hearings. One regarded a zoning amendment change to Article 3, Section 304, and Article 14, Section 1406, regarding the AG zone and industrial and commercial zones. And we had about 30 citizens in the room. The purpose of the agriculture zone is to allow for uninhibited agricultural activity. We live in a changing world, though, and it's vitally important to protect the land. The concern is that allowing industrial and commercial development in the ag zone will undermine the agriculture activity. The proposal is to change the map from Smith Bridge Road to the on the northeast side of Tenny Mountain Highway to the Rumney line, and there would be specific changes in uses in both zones. The planning board decided to take out, actually, the initial proposal was to change it from the bridge next to Clothespin's laundromat on Route 25 all the way to the Rumney line, but the planning board decided to take out a section from the Smith Bridge, take part of the map change and move it to the southwest side of Smith Bridge Road, and then from Smith Bridge Road, take that right, leave that in the ag zone to the Ford Park sales lot, and then continue the change in the commercial zone all the way to the bridge on the northeast side of Route 25. We had many people spoke and many questions. We plan to have, we didn't come to any conclusion. We are going to split the question and have a second hearing on January 2nd, and it was amended and passed. The motion was passed. Then item number 2 was a Tenny Mountain overlay. We had extensive discussion on that regarding the changes in the regulations for ski area development and other commercial development. And also, they wanted to change the commercial zone on the south side of Route 3A from the traffic circle down to Gavoni's, the bottom of Hoyt Hill. And that was continued also to January 2nd for public hearing, second public hearing. And then we discussed storage units, and that was continued to January 2nd. And then we discussed parking changes. I believe there's a new state law regarding parking. And that was continued to January 2nd because the first two hearings took so much time that it was like 10:30 at night and everybody was spent. We're going to request a reference from our attorney, an opinion on wording to Section 304, Article 3. We had a discussion on that, not a public hearing. And then there was discussion regarding the CIP, capital reserve, to increase to $220, and a proposal, and that amendment was, no, $220,000. The CIP, we have a discussion to propose increasing the capital reserve to $220,000, and that we had a motion on that. I believe it passed. Am I right?
It did.
We discussed that earlier in the budget working session, and we're gonna discuss that at the first budget hearing on January
27th?
27th. Yep, January 27th. So we'll discuss that at that meeting. And ideally, if we could get someone from the planning board to come
Yeah.
speak to that vote, would be great.
Okay. Yeah, probably
We'll get
John
somebody.
Christ, maybe?
Sue was the one who
Sue,
represents
yeah.
the planning board.
That's right, yeah.
The only other thing I'll say is I did receive a call from Dean Yetton today with regards to the zoning amendments, and he has asked to be put on the December 23rd Select Board meeting to come in with Mike Ahern to voice some concerns over the zoning amendments to the Select Board. So just as a FYI, they will be coming in on December 23rd.
Thank you.
Do we have any jurisdiction over zoning amendments?
You have jurisdiction over the planning board. So you can make a recommendation back to the planning board, even though it still would go to public hearing and your warrant article.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot of a large amount of the discussion in the first hearing was concerning protecting the agricultural zone due to the fact that we don't know how much we're going to need our agricultural land. And a lot of people just don't want to lose it.
I think protecting the agricultural land is extremely important, except I think because of the fact that there's basically you can develop whatever you want on agricultural land is the issue.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, some of the proposals are that they would not allow auto dealerships and large commercial enterprises in the agricultural zone.
So I think those are some of the concerns that Dean and Mike will voice when they come in.
Okay. Sounds good. When is the next hearing on some of that for the planning board?
January
Second,
2nd.
January 2nd. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Neil?
Yeah, maybe the planning board can have more frequent meetings and break it down to like an hour and a half versus 3 or 4 hours.
yeah, 4.5 hours. Everybody was bushed.
That seems like a reasonable suggestion.
You know, if we had more meetings, we'd probably have 4.5 hour meetings.
So you're saying water will see.
You know, we let we don't exclude anybody.
I was
We
going
let
to say, it also
everybody
could
talk.
be a certain amount of.
We allowed Kevin
trolling.
French, he lives in Rumney, we allowed him to speak too, and he's very authoritative.
All right, Campus Community Council,
Nothing happening in that regard anytime soon.
PES.
Let's see, they had a meeting on the 2nd. Started out with the principal's report highlighting that Plymouth Middle School was ranked 12th out of 268 of the middle schools in New Hampshire. And the elementary school was ranked 86th out of the 442. It then moved on to where they had a really nice handout, and I'll send this around in a moment, where they talked about class sizes, noting that K through 8 is now currently at 364. This actually represents a fairly substantial drop of about 20 students. They talked about the class sizes. They have an average class size of 15 to 16. Where the state average is 20, so we're significantly below the state average. There was also discussion about some of the students needing more help because of complex needs. They talked about several things, like a field trip to the State House, school picture retakes, a mathathon, the Veterans Day celebration, the Thanksgiving luncheon, which they brought back, which was well received. They have some upcoming events, the 8th grade wreaths across America, Elks Hoop Shot, the Jingle Bell Run, and the K3 concert. From there, we started talking about budget. Budget for the school represents a 3+% increase in appropriations, and this is primarily due to some salaries in the collective bargaining agreement. They did talk about reduction in a regular education teacher. However, there was they did reduce that, but added a special ed admin position. Somebody did ask a little bit about this.
I was looking
Apparently, the person who's doing those duties now is a coordinator, and it was unclear specifically, at least to me, why we needed to add an administrative position when we're cutting a regular educator position. Especially since it didn't seem to have a matching. So here's the details for that. They did talk about a specific increase in special education costs and transportation costs. Then we had a rather lengthy discussion on the capital reserve fund and the fund balances. So, let's see, they talked about committing part of the capital reserve to replace a gymnasium door, which is rotted. And right now, the fund balance for that has $211,000 in it. And they project at the end of this fiscal year, it'll have $159,000. They also discussed the option of committing $90,000 of the balance to replace the gymnasium door, but it would not affect the tax rate because that money is already available in their funds. Additionally, the board discussed using the retained fund balance, which is $319,000 and change at the end of this previous year. And they considered committing a portion of this retained fund balance to offset tax rate for next year. That, however, the board agreed that the 3.3% increase is reasonable, and it was not necessary to give back money because they have done so over the last 4 years. There was some additional discussion about that. There was at least one member of the audience that pushed fairly hard for them to reconsider their budget to reduce the burden of taxes. And so that pretty much concludes the Plymouth Elementary School one. Questions on that?
Do you know if their intention is to just roll that new administrative position into their general budget, or to separate that out as a item that's independently votable?
I believe that it's just going to be rolled into the budget.
Okay.
Any other questions on Plymouth Elementary School?
Nope, might as well go to the high school.
The high school. All right. So the first privilege of the floor, there was discussion about the impact of the lighting on the tax rate. There were people that came out for, there were people who came out against adding to the tax burden. Basically, this lighting project is approximately $750,000. And this was revisited at the beginning and at the end of the meeting as well. So I'll try to consolidate that as much as possible. One of the things that was discussed is using some of the raising funds to basically through the ads, basically donations, to offset some of that $750,000 burden, so that it wouldn't be a big hit. The advantage here is the regional high school. That $750,000 doesn't hit all to Plymouth, which in this case would be, if it were just Plymouth, it would be $1 on the tax rate roughly. But because it's spread out, they did go through some of the cost scenarios of what that impact would be. I think they talked about at a $400,000, assuming they could raise some of the funds, and some of the specifics you'll have to check back on. It might be an 11 cent on the Plymouth tax rate if they were able to get, $350,000 raised in donations, etc. Some of the other towns would be much smaller. So let's see. Try to go down to where it was discussed again. So they did discuss, they actually spent quite a bit of time discussing how to properly address funding those lights, because they feel that it's important, but at the same time, they didn't necessarily want to impact taxes. I think, and the discussion probably went for close to 40 minutes, I'm guessing, back and forth on this issue. At the end of it, they decided to simply put it on the warrant, and I don't know the exact wording, but to fund the project, let the taxpayers decide, and hopefully they will give a breakdown on that warrant article what the impact will be to each town, like we do for our stuff. That would be my hope. Let's see. Then we went into principal's report, talking about some of the winter sports had started. They talked about the band marching in the holiday parade. I don't know how many of you attended the holiday parade, but it was
That's great.
fairly long.
A lot of fire engines.
They did have a budget overview showing 18 million expenses and about 4 million in revenues, and some additional revenue sources being explored. They did talk a little bit about the Granite State Challenge team and how in the preliminary round that they had the highest score. Their budget did show a 1.9% overall increase for this next year.
Without the lights.
Without the lights, yes. The lights would be separate warrant article to vote on. Let's see. Some of the biggest cost increases were due to special ed, and that's more about out-of-district placement than anything else. They talked about having approximately $328,000 in the retained fund balance. They made a decision to commit $178,000 to offset taxes, leaving $150,000 in that fund balance. And then basically moved that budget forward. They also approved an advertising policy which allows for them to raise funds, at sporting events and what have you, to, put signage up on the fields, which you've probably seen at other venues. The decision-making process about what goes where and when would be up to the administration in the building. And I think that covers about all of it.
Any questions, comments for Ted? We're good? Conservation Commission.
They meet next week on the 17th at 7 p.m. right here.
No news from Capital Improvement. LRPC.
They canceled this month's meeting. And I didn't attend the last commissioners meeting because we met here, but I was excused. Yay.
Was Neil excused?
I was in another state of mind.
Parks and Rec.
No report.
Parking. No Mary Ann. Energy Commission.
Like I indicated, we have a ribbon cutting thing for the solar array on Monday the 16th. And we're working on getting some people there. And hopefully the board.
I have a question about the solar array.
Yeah.
Do they have cameras on it?
I believe they do. I think over at the,
Camera from the airport covers it.
yeah.
It's working?
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's really important.
Nothing from Advisory Budget Committee. PSU negotiations, nothing until
Spring.
spring. No Mary Ann. Perlac.
I missed the last meeting.
And still no news on police and fire?
I talked to Kevin today. We will be scheduling a meeting for the committee after the holidays to go through the feasibility study and the updated plans for the site.
And union negotiations are done for another year.
Yep, complete.
Public comments. And still looks like no one online. You don't have anything for non-public, right?
That I'm aware of.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.